Welcome to the Growler, a Who Dey podcast hosted by Paul Dana and other bald friends like Mo Egger, Dave Nanemetz, home of all your Bengals breaks, takes. Welcome to the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Balds Don't Lie. Paul Dana Jr., Jay Morrison here. Excited to be with you on a Tuesday. What's going on, Jay?
Hey, we get to talk about a win. It's a little bit different this week.
It is a little bit different. There's a sense of hope and really just not people standing on bridges considering ending it. You know, it's a nice place to start the day and try to keep a little bit of a positive vibe. But look, I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities to get into the negative side of things. Maybe when Mo Egger joins us and maybe he'll update us on the "what are you doing" counter, because I feel like that had a few moments.
I mean, it still feels like there's a lot of angst out there. A lot of people thinking that victory felt hollow and it wasn't what they were expecting. But at this point, you got to take what you can get.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think that a win is got to be all you could be focusing on at this point. More time is needed to get right. For right now, they just need to get a win and buy some time until it starts taking off. All right. Okay. We've got a full show. We want to make sure we get to. Of course, Mo would be joining us here in a little bit. We're going to talk to him about, kind of where he sees some of this season going right now, specifically when we talk about the Bengals defense and if he feels like that changed his opinion. We're going to hear from Tycen Anderson. You're going to hear from Sam Hubbard. We're going to talk a little bit about some growth from young players that I think that is such a key to the big picture of this season. And I thought that maybe was something worth revisiting coming off of Sunday night and entering this week against the Browns. So lots of stuff to get to. Your Growler bet submissions were on fire. There was even a song submission that I'm going to maybe sing. I don't like to. I always have immediate regret. I immediately regret this decision every time. But a song submission came in. It was very well done. And so there's a chance, I don't know, game time decision for me on whether I try to execute it or not. But lots of good submissions this week. So we'll be getting to that. Jay's got stats. You know the stuff. ARBIES. I think we've got a good ARBIES with I've got a photo element to drop in this week to ARBIES. All right.
Well, I think I know what it is.
I think you probably do too. So lots of good stuff there. Reminder, follow us on all your podcast platforms. Please go to the YouTube channel if you're just listening to this and subscribe, notify if you are. Hello, good to see you. Always great to have you on here. Make sure you're giving us good ratings. It helps everybody find us and more people know about the beauty of the Growler Podcast Network. All right. Reminder, our next live show is coming your way before the Eagles game, the next home game, which is in the 4:00 window on the 27th. We will be starting at noon. So from noon to 1, you can find us down at just the awesome venue down on the Banks, BetMGM, Nation Kitchen and Bar. Such good food, such a good time. Millions of TVs. We have $3 Cincy lights. We'll have special guests, Q&A, everything you can imagine. I mean, I don't know what all we're going to be giving away this time, but I can only tell you the prizes are piling up. Free graders for people that come down. We do it all. We have a great time. So highly recommend starting off your tailgating experience right down there. It's right there at the streetcar stop, especially if you're a person that comes down, takes a streetcar down, drop you off, pop in, have a $3 Cincy light, get some free stuff from us and go about your day. And if you want to make sure you reserve a table for that or for really any big day and make sure that you have a spot with tons of TVs and good food and good beer, go to nationkitchenandbar.com. You can reserve a table for any big event at any time. All right. Any news? Not really a ton of news, I thought, yesterday, Jay. I mean, we're just kind of more reviewing the game. No real injuries to come of, according to Zac Taylor. Really, that as far as the news front goes, pretty empty Monday.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, to go on the road and get a win and to come out of that, really the only thing was Burrow going in the blue tent, and there was nothing to that. He got checked for a concussion. He was cleared. He was surprised he even got checked for the concussion. Thought it was more just a wind knocked out of him kind of thing. But that's significant, especially when you're talking about this team that's injuries have been such a big part of the story up to this point. To come out of a game like that relatively clean, I'm sure everybody's got some nicks and dings, but big development to not have anything you have to worry about this week, getting ready for a divisional game, which is always much more physical. They saw it against the Ravens. They're going to see it again against the Browns.
Yeah, and coming off a physical game. I mean, that's just it. I mean, when you play a team like that with a defensive line like that got after you, certainly a big deal. Was kind of asking about the next day review a lot with Zac Taylor yesterday, specifically regarding the offensive line, who had a rough go of it. Obviously, Burrow took a lot of hits. You expected that from the team that leads the league in sacks and has Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns and real dudes up front, an aggressive scheme. But, the real first test for a group that they have been praising pretty consistently, and it wasn't always, it wasn't great. But the analysis from Zac Taylor was kind of one of, look, this looked like some very easy fixable stuff in retrospect, where you had, Amarius Mims with a snap count issue of not understanding the snap count leading to a big one, or just easy stuff with some communication and personnel set up. Like, it didn't feel, it wasn't, now they lost some one-on-ones and the Giants got them some, but it felt more like that rather than they just were physically overwhelmed or not necessarily up to the task. And I think that played out when you go through a second watch on that one, that the Giants are going to do that to most everybody this year, but it wasn't as bad as it felt, where it felt like every time Burrow dropped back, it was a problem. So there's still lots of issues with passing off games and stunts that seems to crop up a lot against them. But for the most part, they probably held up on the film review better than it felt like they held up live, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I do think Burrow helped his offensive line out some, because it wasn't like every time, but it was a lot. He was making a lot of plays happen with his feet, not just the 47-yard touchdown run, but he was moving around. There probably could have been 2 or 3 more sacks had it been a less agile quarterback. So he did help his O-line out a little bit there.
I disagree on that, in the fact that I feel like he caused extra sacks. I mean, he mentioned himself after the game having happy feet and not feeling comfortable in the pocket. It didn't feel like he was getting the ball out as quick as he needed to and getting rid of it in certain times. I mean, you could think of the play where he was like weaving back one way, back the other. It reminded me of rookie year Burrow in Philly when he got blown up, rotating back the other way. Like, there were a couple of times where he just, and I thought that was interesting that he admitted feeling uncomfortable after the game, because that shows up. And I felt like there were some times where that cost the offensive line a little bit, where maybe they had a loss in there, and there were a few where you saw, Cordell Volson had a couple tough moments, and then whatever we're thinking of that holding call, obviously he's probably not real thrilled with that, I'm sure. But as far as in pass pro, where they weren't great, but a lot of times Joe covers that up by getting it out or making a quick guy miss, or not trying to do too much. And I think he was trying to do too much at points, and that he probably should have came in with a more clear view of needing to be getting it out quicker and throwing the ball away a little bit more. But hey, that's not necessarily who he is, and he kind of admitted afterward it's going to be part of his film review.
And that the back and forth one, that actually ended up being an intentional grounding, and so that's essentially another sack. It goes from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 24 on that play, and that one was on him.
Yeah. One other thing, Sam Hubbard talked a little bit more yesterday, and Sam talked, about the rotation and things like that, things that you heard us talk about in the walkout the other night. And, they had 8 guys with at least 21 snaps on that defensive line, and everybody seemed to kind of have a moment where they made some kind of an impactful play, which is just such an injection of life for that defense that badly needed a game like that, where they felt like they had a real defensive line. A word Sam that actually used to me on Sunday night, one that felt like a real NFL defensive line. But he also touched a little bit more onto his hamstring injury, which has kind of been this very vague point of reference here about his performance this year. And he's looked much better the last couple of weeks, healthier, and admitted such. Here's Sam Hubbard talking a little bit more about that yesterday.
I'm feeling better. I had that hamstring that really held me down the first couple weeks, but I worked through it, and taking those plays off, getting some rotations going definitely helped lighten the load now that we got the guys back, and I'm feeling good.
You said a couple weeks ago you thought it might be something you'd have to deal with all year. Were you wrong about that? Is it completely behind you now?
No, it is something I have to deal with all year. It was pretty tough. Unfortunate to happen early in training camp. I didn't want to talk about it. We were down a lot of D linemen at the time, and I was just playing through it. But grade 3 hamstrings can linger for a whole season. So, but with my Nick Cosgray, our physical therapist, who's a legend, he's getting me through, and I am feeling better and stronger each week. I think my play reflects it, the film reflects it. So it's good to have that coming along.
So, yeah, I mean, the grade 3 hamstring thing is something that's kind of been out there, and you hear him kind of talk a little bit more specifically. He has probably benefited more from this rotation than anybody on this entire team, and just keeping him fresher out there, specifically not only coming back from the hamstring, that's something that's going to be part of his season, but just as a guy that it's just better in not forcing him to be out there in survival mode.
Yeah, it wasn't just this week. You really kind of noticed it last week against Baltimore, where he had 3 pressures. He had the sack, or not the sack, the safety, the tackle in the end zone, and then he played well this week too. He only had 2 tackles, but he did have a pass breakup, and he was much more effective in the pass rush when he was in there than we've seen earlier in the year. He's starting to get back to looking like the old Sam Hubbard.
Yeah, he is. And on that note, we're going to get to somebody who's getting back to looking like the old Mo Egger. What's up, Mo? How are we doing?
Well, what's up, guys?
No, we're just having a little podcast here. Decided to talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a topic that you're very familiar with. It's good to see you here. I have a topic that I want to broach with you right off the top, though.
Okay.
And it's important. And it was a theme of your tweeting reaction, should we say?
Okay, we're doing that again, huh?
I love to do that, but no, it's more about something that we've been talking about over a lot of time last week. I believe we mostly talked about it when I was on with you at BW3s last week, which this week will be at the BW3s back in Blue Ash.
Harper Station.
Yes, not
yes.
yes. Blue Ash.
By all means, go to Blue Ash. It's a lovely location. But
yes. So we'll be there in Harper Station, but Punts for Pizza.
Yes.
Man, what a weekend for Punts for Pizza. Now, my question is this. You said no local pizza joint decided to take you up on Punts for Pizza, which is you need. By the way, adding the number 4 into the middle is just marketing genius, really.
Thank you. I don't just wake up and come up with these things. There's a lot of meticulous thought that goes into it.
I would say, now, we here at the Growler are also open to anybody that has interest in Punts for Pizza.
Let's do it. I'm all in. So
look, if anybody, and my thought was, what about if the pizza people don't want a piece of this, which I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want. Look, Bengals get 4 punts. There's some kind of a deal going on with their pizza situation. It's great, right?
Yes,
what's wrong with this? Punts for pints?
Punts for pints is fine too.
Look, plenty of local beer establishments that probably have pints that they would like people to come consume. We feel like we could help with that. We saw what happened in the Penn Station debacle. I feel like we could bring some love and bring some people in, and just because of punts.
There's lots of different things. There's lots of different things that we could do. If there's any local urologists out there that would like to get involved, we can take this a lot of different directions. So I'll walk you through this because there was some math involved here. Okay.
Yeah.
The average NFL team gets 11 drives per game. So in weeks 2 through 5, the Bengals forced a grand total of 7 punts. That's not good enough. Now they did force 5 against New England, but the defense was certainly complicit in the team's demise. But that game to me was more about what the Bengals didn't do on offense. The next 4 games, they forced a combined 7 punts. So I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a punt number that we could get to. All right. So 11 possessions, 11 opposing possessions per game. If the Bengals force 4 punts, that seems pretty good. That would mean the Bengals are forcing punts on 36.4% of opposing offensive drives. Now, if you can also get in a turnover on downs, which the Bengals did thanks to DJ Turner, or a turnover, a pick, a fumble, those things are great too. But let's work with this number, 36.4. That would put the Bengals at 15th in the NFL in third down conversion success rate on defense. What do we always say about the Bengals defensively? They've just got to be middle of the pack. And so there you go. I'm putting them in the middle of the pack on third down conversion rate on defense, which, by the way, I think the Giants were 5 of 15. The numbers are skewed because they kept going for it on fourth down and had some success. So I'm sitting there going, okay, middle of the pack, 36.4%. That's 4 punts out of 11. With this offense, that should be good enough. Now, Sunday's game was weird because we got 4 Giants punts. They all came in the first half. And so, I was going, all right, my hypothesis might work, but they're going to have to force some more punts in the second half. And they never did. But as a general rule, it worked. The Giants punted 4 times. The Bengals won. And I was right. And no pizza place, no bar, no bakery, nobody else chose to take advantage.
We should try to work in a Ryan Rico distance, like a punts for pizza, where you get a certain percentage off for how long his punt of that game is.
Wow.
But you're right. That there was the Giants went for it 5 times on fourth down. There could have been a lot more punts had they played a coach that was not quite as aggressive.
The Growler podcast at gmail.com. If you are or know anybody who is interested in some quality promotions about pints, pizza, urology, tangentially connected issues, we're here for you.
Yeah.
And I think this needs to be. Look, everybody admits that having the peas up in the corner of the stadium is the way to go, but we're happy to help out here if that's not something that's going to be happening to bring attention to this important issue.
So when we first talked about this, I brought up, at the Reds games, they have those Ks up there in left field, right? Every time there's a strikeout and then, so many strikeouts, everybody gets pizza. Let's do a P. And my thing on Twitter on Sunday night, I was going to do that and just after the first punt, just tweet P. And then after the second one, PP. And then I'm like, there are going to be a lot of folks who have no idea what I'm doing here, that think I'm heavily intoxicated and Mo has lost control of his phone. So I didn't do that, but I might on Sunday. We'll see. But punts for pizza would be 1 for 1. And that is a sign of a defense that took a sign, not the only sign, obviously, but a sign of a defense that took a step forward on Sunday night.
No doubt. Okay. With that established, did you have any update to the what is he doing counter this week, or is it just strictly a reaction to the Chase Brown fumble?
The what is he doing should go to the Giant safety who, when Joe Burrow is running this way, decides to just turn his attention to what's happening over here. So had I been a Giants fan, that guy would have gotten the what is he doing of the year. So the what is he doing? Yes. And this wasn't his fault, but when they were having Mike Gesicki block Brian Burns, there was a loud, what is he doing, aimed at Dan Pitcher and Zac Taylor. We've got other tight ends, including one who's on the team and paid just to block. And we've got Mike Gesicki, who, for all of his talents, that's not really what he's known for. And he's just trucked by Brian Burns. So there was the first one. The second one was the the Chase Brown fumble. That if that gets recovered by New York, I fear the outcome might have been a little bit different. And we love Chase Brown, right? Which Bengal fan doesn't really like Chase Brown right now? But fourth quarter, and the ball just kind of comes out, and there's a scramble for it. Very big, loud. What is he doing there? When in that case, you're just asking rhetorically because you know what he's doing. He's potentially coughing away the game. Fortunately, the ball went out of bounds. But there was a what is he doing there? But it was a relatively light week for what is he doings, which is a good thing, especially most of the what is he doings have been assigned to the defense so far this year, and the defense played well enough that there weren't that many of those.
Yeah, I figured that count's going to be pretty low if anytime they win a game. But the Chase Brown thing was notable. He said he was trying to stiff arm the guy, and he was trying to get more than what he should. Obviously, in that position, get the first down, wrap up, go down. I'm still puzzled by that play, the Mike Gesicki play, because even if you even if you had a better blocker in there, just the way that Orlando Brown pulled and vacated, that was going to be tough to get squared in front of Burns and block him. We're going to talk to Dan Pitcher tomorrow or Thursday. That's going to be one of the questions of what was actually supposed to happen on that play.
There were a number of plays like that, though, where it felt like something was wrong, whether it was in communication, whether it was in execution, whether it was a bad play call versus a certain look, where it just – and that's something we kind of touched on in the news a little bit, where when you look back at the offensive line stuff and some of the issues that occurred, a lot of it didn't feel like, oh, they just got abused one-on-one. A lot of it looked like it was just almost something in the play call or the communication and execution of it that looked off against the Giants.
I think the word is clunky. The entire offensive operation especially up front, looked clunky. Like it felt like there were more, and you guys know more about this than I do. It felt like there were more assignment errors on the offensive line and in the blocking scheme than it was just guys getting beat. Now, guys got beat. But yeah, the whole, and that play sort of typifies it, I guess. The whole thing felt just disjointed, but they won.
My main question to you would be, when you come out of this and you start thinking about this game, did you come out of this feeling more encouraged about the direction of the defense or more concerned about the step back from the offense?
Encouraged, and the reason why was the theme of your post-game piece, Paul, which was most of the teams the Bengals play in the coming weeks offensively look a lot like the New York Giants. And so the question, when your defense is as bad as the Bengals defense was for the first 5 weeks, the question is, are they going to be able to win a game where the offense just turns the key and the engine doesn't come on? And for one night, the answer was yes. And if you're going to have, I think when a team has a great year, with the passage of time, we sort of invent this idea that they won every game by 40 points. And they were the best offense in the league. And if you're going to have a really good year, you have to win games in a variety of ways. You have to win some really, I thought about this. I'm a UC fan, obviously. I thought about this on Saturday. The Bearcats won a really ugly game. And I said, kind of reminded me of the middle of the 2021 season. And the person that I said this to laughed at me. And I said, no, this team's not as good as that one. That was awesome. That's Sauce Gardner, NFL guys all over the place, went undefeated. But in the middle of the season, they won some of these games that were not very pretty. They were so ugly that Luke Fickell was having to remind his players it's okay to celebrate a win. You are going to have games like that in a successful season. Time will tell if the Bengals have a successful season, but you have to win games like that. In 2021, not every game looked like Joe Burrow throwing for 525 against the Baltimore Ravens. They had to gut out a win against Denver. They had to gut out a win against a couple of teams that season. And then there were blowouts. So what Sunday made me think is, down the road, in a more critical situation, although Sunday's game was certainly critical, maybe they will be able to lean on their defense. Also, defenses do get better. Go back to 2021. Again, we love that team. Mike White scored 34 points against Lou Anarumo. They gave up more than 40 twice. What happened by the end of the season, though? The defense got better. And so now, with the benefit of better health up front, aside from Dax Hill, there's really not unless there's somebody I'm not thinking of, a key guy that's not available right now. Maybe with the benefit of better health and just the rhythm of the season and playing some bad defenses, by December, the Bengals can get to that lofty standard of middle of the pack in the NFL defensively. And perhaps Sunday was the first step in that direction, and they can take another one against the historically bad Cleveland Browns, a Philadelphia offense that is not clicking on all cylinders, and a quarterback who turns the ball over a bunch. Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew or Jeff Hostetler or whichever quarterback the Raiders throw out there. So I certainly was frustrated in real time watching some of the stuff that the Bengals were doing on offense, but I walked away from the game encouraged more than anything else. And the other thing to me, and I haven't looked this up or seen it, and maybe you guys have, and perhaps you'll ask Lou Anarumo about it. I thought the key to the way the Bengals played on defense on Sunday night was they tackled really well, right? Mm-hmm. The Giants didn't test them downfield, but still the longest pass play they gave up was 15 yards. Yep. Guys caught it, guys got tackled. Compare that to early in the season. when they were missing tackles all over the place against the New England Patriots. If that becomes the new norm, then this defense can really take a major step forward and force 4 punts per game.
Yeah, because you didn't see guys running free, and that's where a lot of the Bengals tackles issues stem from, was the bad angles and not getting in the proper position to get guys down. But I'm with you on the being more encouraged about the defense thing, because if you think about it, they get everybody back, and you're thinking, okay, you ease into this. The offense scores 30 again, and then this defense can kind of tee off and show that they can get some stops, and you win a game like 31-17, and that didn't happen at all. This game was squarely on the defense's shoulders, and in their first game of having that whole group together, they responded and they won. And I'm with you. The defenses can get better, and for them to have to just be thrown into a game like that right off the bat, a must-win game, and to respond like that, I thought was really encouraging, as opposed to just the Bengals scoring on 4 straight possessions again, getting a big lead and letting that defense tee off. They had to fight and claw, and really they had to win that game. The defense had to do it, and they did it. And I think that was significant.
Can the offense afford an off week? And for
one Sunday night,
the answer was yes. Now, again, they can't go deep into the fourth quarter with 10 points, as the NBC graphic illustrated, 1-166 when they scored 10 points or less. Which, by the way, that means 20% of games in franchise history they've scored 10 points or fewer, which is, to me, remarkable. But, a week ago, we all wondered, okay, the offense is really playing well, but can the defense bail it out if it has to? Maybe we didn't think that was going to be the case against the Giants, but it was, and they won a game. And that's I think at least you can't help but be encouraged by that, especially if you think, God, you know what, they can use these next 3 weeks to stack wins and really start to pick up some confidence defensively.
Yeah. To me, and one thing, when I wrote last week, kind of just talking to as many people as I could from different kind of angles about the Bengals defense and fixes, one that Steve Palazzolo, our good friend over at PFF and now 33rd Team, Check the Mic podcast, pointed out was, look at Denver last year. Remember how awful Denver was early in the season? And then people stopped thinking about them because they just kept quoting the Dolphins numbers over and over again and not realizing their defense got much more stable, got better, and was a really decent unit by the end of the year. It's like, it's not like it can't happen. And it's not like, another thing that a lot of people said to me was like, look, nobody thinks that Lou Anarumo stopped knowing how to coach defense,
right?
Stop knowing how to do this. So get him his guys back and things can get better. And the important point, and one that I think is kind of a theme across this team, if they're going to get to be at the levels they thought they could be, if they're going to become a Super Bowl type of team, it's going to be because over the next 10 weeks, all of these young players we are all sitting here talking about, saying they've got to get better. This guy's got to show up. These draft classes suck, right? Like, that have been a part of the conversation through the first 5 weeks, have to start doing that. You started to see a little bit of that on Sunday. One of the biggest games for the youth of this team, starting to make those big plays. DJ Turner with the game-winning PBU. Jackson McKinley, McKinley Jackson. I just, one of these days I'm gonna stop doing that. McKinley Jackson, showed pretty well. We know what Chase Brown continues to do. Jordan Battle even had his first good, performance of the year. He played more. You're seeing. Heck, let's throw Rico in there, right? Like, Tycen Anderson, who we'll hear from here in a minute. Like, that's going to be such a big part of this team's ability to actually win in the playoffs. Right now, as you analyze this team, you're just saying, how do they get there? They've dug this hole. How do they get there? They buy themselves time and get wins until these young players start growing and becoming a force and creating a new future for this roster depth. A big game for that on Sunday, I thought, and one that can start to steer the direction of where they go forward.
Yeah, and you hate to take too much comfort in the schedule, because we did that to start the season, and then look what happened. But the coming opponents, specifically this one on Sunday, should give you an opportunity to win while allowing those guys to continue to grow into the roles they're going to have to grow into. You talked about buying time. I've kind of made it just give me to that Baltimore game and give me a chance. Give me to the Baltimore game and make that game matter. Let me get to Baltimore and believe they could use a win on the road there as a jumping off point. And maybe they can, and maybe they can't. And if they don't, we'll sort of reassess things. But you got to make that game matter. And Sunday night was a step in that direction, and hopefully they can take more. But yeah, I walked away, and maybe I'm in the minority. I walked away feeling pretty good. Look, this offense is good. Everything would suggest the offense is good. That doesn't mean they're immune from poor performances, and it certainly doesn't mean they're not going to have more this year. You need a defense that can figure out a way to get you through a game. You need a defense that can get a stop in a game where maybe they don't play all that great otherwise. And if those things start to materialize, perhaps we look back at Sunday night for that unit and then for the team as a whole as a turning point. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Do you give the defense credit for a stop when a kicker misses 2 field goals inside a 50-yard line? Do you look at that as more luck, or do you look at that as they did do that? They forced at least a mid-level field goal.
Yeah, it's both. Luck is a part of life. Luck is a part of sports. They did get the stops. At the end of the day, look, they weren't perfect, but if those 2 kicks go through and the Giants don't score otherwise, they still have gone on the road and held a team to 1 touchdown and 13 points.
Yep.
Maybe they would have lost the game, but it wouldn't have been because of the defense. I also thought it was interesting. The Bengals defensively, they just sort of lined up and played, right? Wasn't a whole lot to that scheme and didn't need to be, but they just kind of lined up and played. And I don't know what that means moving forward, but it was sort of as they say in the preseason, a vanilla looking defense and yet still pretty effective.
Well, and encouraging, because that's what we were talking about, is that, is Lou Anarumo going to have to go to this just uncomfortable for him, blitz heavy? That's what he's just going to have to become Wink Martindale, something he never wants to be. And I think the fact that he's out there and saw pressure and disruption without having to do that allowed him to sit back and let it be a simpler plan for his guys to just make the plays, tackle well, and keep everything in front of them. And I think it played out that way. Before I let you go, Mo, I had one other thing I wanted to discuss with you, and that's I just wanted to make sure, and I don't mean to go to your Twitter feed multiple times, but I want to make sure you get credit for an excellent joke, because people like us, we just want recognition when we feel like we've come up with a good joke. You want to get that good laugh, like. When I tell a good joke and my kids don't give me the proper laugh, I have to feel like I have to sit down and talk to them about giving people the laugh.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't my joke that was bad. It was you, right? And so I want to make sure that you know that you are getting the respect for a story that was out about former Columbus Zoo CEO Tom Staff. I was 7 years in prison for a ringleading theft of $2.3 million in goods and services from the zoo. He could have faced a max of 37 and a half years. You said the prison he's going to should charge admission and allow people to just stare at him while he sits in his cage. I want that to happen now. Like I really do. I want people to get to go through, watch him sit there and stare at a book or read eat his like bad meal, whatever it is, and just look through the bars,
throw peanuts at him.
maybe knock on the bars a little bit, tap on them, just for effect. I want this to happen. Can we sign up for that?
When you go to the zoo, there's always like the little bio of the animal, right? Like, here's Coco the ape, and here's where he came from, and this breed is indigenous to this part of the world. They should have like a little bio for the guy that says, well, he was the CEO and he stole $2.3 million. And so here he is, and take a look at him. And then maybe like one of those gumball machines with food. Like, if you go to the Cincinnati Zoo, you can like line up and feed the giraffe, right? You can do one of those deals where like dispenses like ham or something, and all right, here you go, man. And you can feed them.
Throw some turkey slices at him.
Yeah. Thank you for that recognition. I was proud of that one. And what I was really happy was everybody seemed to get it, because you know how sometimes you'll make what you think is a great joke, and then there's a guy that replies, and he's either trying to take it too seriously or he doesn't understand it. Like I I didn't get anybody because I thought somebody was going to be like, oh, you're anti-zoo. And the irony of it is my daughter was at the zoo yesterday. So no, I'm very pro zoo. I love the zoo. Fortunately, it was the perfect Twitter joke that it felt like even the people who didn't get it just rolled their eyes and moved on and didn't reply. The replies would suggest people understood the joke, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
You can never go wrong poking fun at a felon.
That's right.
There's no doubt about that. On that note, Mo, I will see you this afternoon at Harper's Point.
Yes.
It'll be great to be there, and we'll have plenty to discuss. Maybe we can continue to push punts for pizza or pints or whatever. Or just this marketing genius that you have created.
See what we can do. See you guys.
All right. Have a good one.
See ya.
All right, great to catch up with Mo. I wanted to kind of dip back into a topic that I kind of talked about there, and that being the theme of these younger players and some of the development that we've seen from them, because you're just seeing it sort of across the board in all of these different places, and I think that is what we're going to end up talking about at the end of this season. I mean, there's lots of storylines that will develop, but I do think by the time we get to January, we will be really focused on all of these young guys that are playing. We've seen them cost them games to this point, and now you're starting to see them be a part of the reason that they're winning games and start to build that future. I just think those types of players are really going to be critical in how they go forward. I mean, so we heard really positive vibes about Jordan Battle from this game. Just talk about that specifically. It hasn't always been good for Jordan this year. Obviously, he's kind of doghoused it for most of the year when they really needed him to come in and be a guy. Again, year 2, third-round pick, and he hasn't seized that opportunity or shown the initiative to seize that opportunity, and that has been frustrating, I think, for them wanting to give him playing time. Well, his playing time increased for the second straight week, and I thought Zac Taylor's reaction when talking about him was notable. The tone was very different. Hey, he made some good plays, talked about, and you see that. You see Jordan Battle showing up. There's Jordan Battle, first snap in a drive. He's getting in, boom, he makes a tackle. You're seeing him be active. Some of that stuff that you've seen from him. When we thought Battle versus Bell was going to be a battle before they started camp, we thought this would be a real discussion, and it just, Jordan never really entered the conversation there as Vaughn really seized the need for communication, and Jordan really didn't do anything seizing. And so I think you're seeing that now, and that could be a big development. I'm curious to see what his snap count looks like next week, because it feels like it could be a thing where he goes from 8 to 14, and now it's up to a 50-50 split. And next thing you know, he ends up being the guy before too long. He's certainly moving it in that direction, and I think that's possible, and that's probably good for everyone, for whether it's Vaughn keeping his legs fresh or that's for Jordan getting more opportunity.
Yeah, I think that specifically is notable for a couple reasons. First of all, he wasn't good against Baltimore, and they still increased his snap counts this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that says a lot. I think about McKinley Jackson, and you get Sheldon Rankins back. You got your whole complement of defensive line. They more than doubled his snaps. He didn't show much in the first week, so if they're seeing stuff in practice. Maybe it's just a trust element, a feel it out, but to get these guys more and more reps. But going back to the Battle thing, there was a theme with that. It was a bad game against Baltimore, and he redeemed himself. Ryan Rico, rookie, holder, basically cost him the game with the drop. He redeemed himself with that performance. He had a great punting night. He handled all 3 snaps cleanly. DJ Turner, not a rookie, but still a young guy. DPI redeems himself with the PBU at the end to seal the game. Chase Brown, second year, the fumble it wasn't a turnover, but it was a bad look. He redeemed himself with the touchdown right after that. You're seeing these guys given the opportunity. And yeah, they're young, they're going to make mistakes, but the way they answer to them and the way the coaching staff answers by putting more and more on their plate, I think that's significant.
Yeah, it really is. Let's talk about, you mentioned Rico. We got to talk about Tycen Anderson, who does not get enough respect for what he does on special teams. I mean, before he got hurt last year against San Francisco, I mean, Darren Simmons couldn't stop talking about how good he was. I remember talking to Uncle Mike about that, and Mike Thomas, who is kind of been a mentor for Tycen, and talking about how, I mean, he looks like a really top level special teamer in this league for a long, long time. And then he has the ACL injury, and he's come back. And as much as we've talked about the booming punts from Rico, which have been unbelievable, it's been the fact that Tycen Anderson can track them down. And you saw that make a difference. And then Zac Taylor gives him a game ball after the game. So I sort of had a question for Zac Taylor, like, game ball for a gunner. Don't see that too often. And also talked to Tycen, and he pointed out like he was just happy and smiling. So it was his first game ball, not counting his preseason one. He kind of counts that, kind of doesn't, when he had the preseason game with 2 picks a couple years ago. But said, look, like, I'm keeping this thing. It's special. It has meant a lot to me. But he talked a little bit about his connection with Rico. After we were done, he called themselves the LeBron and D Wade of punting. And I was like, boy, that is good stuff. Here's Tycen Anderson, followed by Zac Taylor talking about giving a game ball to Tycen Anderson.
Is there a different timing with Rico than other guys just because he's hitting it so high?
I'm still getting used to Rico's timing, honestly. He's hanging it up there. But I've told him probably the first game of the season, I'm like, hang it up there a little bit longer for me, and I got you every time. Mm-hmm. And he's been hanging it up there ever since I told him that. He's been hanging it up there so good, and he just giving me layups. Really, I just gotta make the plays.
So your thing is outkick your coverage is not possible with you. Has to be your goal, right? Like you're gonna try to chase it down every single time as long as he hits it up.
Every time.
You don't often see gunners get game balls.
Yeah.
What went into that decision, and what you see from Tycen that made that feel like he earned that?
Yeah, just really pleased with Tycen coming off an injury, how he's worked himself back, and just giving himself an opportunity to make plays for this team. And that's a jolt of energy. We come off of 3 tough plays offensively. The first one he gets. We have a great punt there by Ryan. And Tycen's in there to really flip the field and turn it into a 55-yard flip. And that's so critical and brings a lot of life. So you go from a situation where we went 3 and out, the juice level's probably down a bit, to all of a sudden you've re-energized the team, and the defense can go out there and get a stop. And so just proud of Tycen. That's just, Tycen's a fan favorite in the locker room. He's always worked the right way. He's gone through adversity and just put himself in a really good position to help this team win. And just really proud of him, and he was very deserving of it.
Drop Tycen's name into that group of, draft picks, young players. I mean, we haven't seen much of him due to injury. He had the redshirt year, essentially world's worst hamstring injury, right? and then had the ACL last year, and he's shown flashes. And again, when we rightfully criticize Duke Tobin's draft classes in recent years that haven't given them enough early enough, a lot of it also takes time development. A lot of it also has had setbacks due to injury and things like that. A day 3 special team star is a box you need to check as a drafting, and when you're trying to make picks and fill out rosters that have impactful players everywhere. And Tycen Anderson appears to be a pretty significant hit in that direction. And so the stats on punting, which everybody, Jay, and I mean everybody, loves punting stats. I wanted to specifically filter it. Just because it's punting doesn't mean I can't filter out. I love to filter, and let's get situational. Yeah. Rico, we've seen these booming plus yardage punts. So when the Bengals are still in their own end, as only punts from your own 40 or back. So when you got a chance to bomb it, right? Net punting yards, Rico and the Bengals lead the NFL, as you might imagine, because he leads in total punting. 52 yards net per punt on those 13 punts. The league average is 44, and they're 4 yards clear of anybody else in the NFL. That is an amazing combination because it's not anybody can boom it. I mean, obviously Rico has a pretty unique leg, but his hang time, he's got 3 over 5 seconds hang time. And you hear Tycen Anderson pointing out, look, that's just, I'll get there. Don't think that you can outkick me. I will get there every time. And he's proving that he can. And he's just right there at that perfect timing. It's a really incredible knack to not only get off the line and have the speed to get down there, but hit that timing just right and make those plays. It's becoming a real weapon. When you're talking about 8 yards per punt on 13 punts, I mean, you're talking about 100 plus hidden yards that you just acquire by having this combination of the LeBron and D Wade of punting and gunning, I guess, as he called himself.
I thought it was really interesting yesterday because Tyson talked to a lot of people yesterday. He was a popular guy, and I asked him after you had talked to him. He played 1,000 special team snaps in college. He's in the MAC. He's big man on campus. There's not a lot of MAC guys with NFL talent, and he's still, by request, playing special teams in his senior year. And I was like, were you a gunner or were you a personal protector? And he's like, I was actually like a left tackle because in college you can release on the snap, and so he could still get down the field. And I was like, so how was that learning process to play gunner? And I wasn't aware of this. I had forgotten. If you remember last year, he started as the personal protector. He said he went to Darren and said, "Can I play gunner?" And Darren trusted him with that and put him out there. And it's been an amazing transformation. I mean, he has, like Darren said, he was playing at a Pro Bowl level last year. He's getting to it this year. And those are the guys that you need. Zac talked about too, about how popular he is in the locker room. He's one of those glue guys that every roster needs. And I think it's great that we're talking about him because he's a guy, number one, deserves it. And number two, a lot of casual fans don't really know that much about, and he's playing a huge role.
Yeah, he is. And they've kind of found ways and found roles for a lot of these guys. And just by getting some snaps, which is a good chance to sort of talk about Jermaine Burton, he was inactive for the first time in Sunday's game. Zac Taylor said post game that it wasn't really about anything about him. It was about situational. Trenton Irwin being up. It's like, okay, what is that? What is that contingency that you're worried about? Is it they're considering yanking Charlie Jones off punt return? Because obviously Jones has the fumble and it's been okay this year, but I don't know. I mean, what is a contingency that you need Trenton Irwin for rather than take the possibility that you could need Jermaine Burton? What is happening behind the scenes? Obviously, Zac Taylor's not going to stand in front of a microphone and say what that is. Who knows? Young players are young players, and we'll see how that develops as the year goes on. But they were trying to keep Burton engaged with that small. He only had one reception, but they would give him a few snaps. Go run the deep ball in Kansas City. Go have a few things that you go and do to keep them engaged. And with Burton, I think it's interesting to see if that's part of what's going on and how they try to make sure they're keeping him on board after this, which very much reminded me of early Tyler Boyd healthy scratch from Ken Zampese, which was a part of his early part of Tyler Boyd's story, which his entire career really changed after the 4th and 12 in Baltimore, where he kind of got his taste and started to figure it out after that. But that wasn't like that happened immediately. He had real rough patches early in his career.
Yeah, and you mentioned it where Burton has the one reception, and he 2-3 snaps a game, maybe 5, and some people might look at the snap counts what's the point? Dejon Anthony's had games where he's played 1 snap. A lot of these rookies that they just get that little tiny taste. And I thought it was really interesting that Zac Taylor talked about it yesterday, that when these guys know that they've got a down and distance or a package, or there's a possibility for them to get in the game, they stay much more engaged. And they know that at any point that could come up and they need to get in there. And then they get in there and they get a taste and they get their feet wet. And then you start relying on them more and more because you realize that it's not too big for them. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of times you have guys like that aren't quite ready to contribute, and you just see them at the end of the day on the game book, and it just says did not participate. And you've got a bunch of guys that didn't play a single snap, and the Bengals aren't doing that. They're finding ways, a Jordan Battle, 7 snaps against Baltimore, to get these guys in and just kind of dip their toe in it, see if it's too big for them. And that's going to pay dividends down the road where you're just going to start stacking snaps and getting them more and more reps in the game if they show they can handle it.
Yeah. And Chase Brown now, 5.5 yards per carry, which, ranks in the top 8. He's tied for 6th in the league amongst qualifying runners. I mean, his success rate is up over 47%. You're seeing the impact, and you're seeing his role grow for the first time. He had more snaps than Zach Moss. You wonder, how much more that's going to continue. It feels like it might. He's certainly been far more productive than Zach Moss, who over the last 3 weeks in particular has kind of struggled to get things going. It feels like it needs to go in that direction of the old Mixon Pirine, where your every down, your most of the time back is Chase Brown, and then Zach Moss is in there situationally in 2-minute in clear passing down situation, but that usually leads to your 70-30 type of split. And considering what we're seeing from Chase at this point, it feels like that really needs to go that way. And for the first time, we saw it start to really go that way Sunday night.
Yeah, and that was the big conversation at the offseason, training camp, all that, is getting more explosive in the run game. And Chase is a big reason that they've done that. I went back and I looked. So far this year, the Bengals have 12 explosive runs. If you count a 12 or more as 12 yards or more as explosive, we got 12 of those. Last year at this time, through 6 games, they only had 6. So they've doubled it. Of the 12 they have this year, Chase Brown has 8 of them. So he's a big, big part of this. And if you bump it up a little bit higher and look at runs greater than 14 yards, last year at this time they had 1. This year they have 7. So they're getting exactly what they were looking for. And I always felt like it would kind of go this way where you kind of lean on the veteran a little bit more earlier and Zach Moss and see what Chase Brown can do. And he's just demanding, not verbally demanding the ball more, but with his play demanding to be on the field more and to kind of flip that snap count. And it wasn't great Sunday night against the Giants. That 30-yard run at the end really kind of boosted up his yards per carry. But that's what happens when you have guys like that, where they hammered in there. You're eventually going to pop one. And he's looked for weeks like he's ready to pop one. That obviously whatever the yard line was, it was going to be, if they were on the 20, that would have been an 80-yard touchdown. He was just gone up the middle. It feels like one of those big ones is coming, 60, 70, 80, because he's right there on the cusp.
Well, I mean, you've always got stats that matter, and that just stands out because as well as Joe Mixon is doing in Houston, and that seems to get brought up a lot when people see Joe have big games, and if the Bengals lose or whatever, it's like, oh, look what Joe Mixon is. I loved when Joe Mixon was here doing, could have been doing that here. It wasn't that they didn't believe that Joe Mixon still had value as an NFL runner. It was his style didn't fit what they wanted, and they wanted to get explosive runs. They weren't as concerned, with the type of stuff that he was bringing. They wanted more missed tackles and more explosive runs and more in the passing game. And I feel like they've gotten that from Chase Brown. They needed him to become that type of guy. And those numbers speak to it. That's what they wanted. They're out here also leading the league in neutral down pass rate. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Because that's who they are. Spread them out and take advantage of explosives against lighter boxes by making the guy missing, by breaking through. And you see the way Chase Brown runs, that the quick way he hits the holes, it fits the downhill, it fits the shotgun, it fits all those schemes. And good for Joe Mixon. What Houston is doing, under center, wide zone, cut back across stuff, fits his game. Best for both parties. Okay. Good. good for him. That doesn't mean that the shift to what the Bengals have done hasn't worked. They haven't been as good the last couple of weeks, but it's certainly, you see it. And I think the shift to Chase Brown helps make that happen more. And another one of those young players that can make a big difference. I mean, those explosives, boy, how many hours were wasted talking about the need for more explosive plays. One more quick Jay's Got Stats as we get into all of our stuff. I know we had a special stats request this week didn't we have a special stats request?
Yeah, for Paul Malloy, our good friend. So he said, I know last week he talked about 1-4, the chances of making the playoffs, 6.6%. How much did the chances of the Bengals making the playoffs increase by getting to 2-4? So I went and I looked it up. Not a lot, just 10.7%. But it is notable that since the league expanded the playoffs in 2021, at least one team has made the playoffs after starting 2-4. 5 have done it total. Last year, the Packers did it. In 2022, the Jags did it. 2021, 3 teams did it: the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Patriots. So you bump it up to 10.7%. So I was wondering, well, what happens if they beat Cleveland and they get to 3-4? What's the percentage of chances of making the playoffs at 3-4? It almost doubles. It goes up to 19.2%. So they're climbing back into it. I didn't go the deep dark hole and see what the chances are at 2-5. Maybe I will look and see after if they do lose that game. But huge opportunity here to get up in that 20% realm. That's not great, but at 3-4. A 2-game winning streak, 3 out of 4. Your defense is back again. It's gonna make all the difference in the world in mindset going into that Philadelphia game if this team can be 3-4.
Yeah, and I think the recent success portion of that stat dive there is really important when you have the extra game and the expanded playoffs combination. You see this every. I mean, last year the Packers, a prime example, right? That team had as good a chance to win. I've referenced them before here. I mean, as that's sort of the vision of the path. People really don't like when I talk about the path because they just want to be like, no, they're screwed. There is none. Stop being like that. That because this vision exists, that's the one. Like that's what it looks like. Where that Packers offense was just unbelievable last year, and they're essentially a game they had in the pocket against San Francisco away from potentially maybe making their Super Bowl run. So that's what it looks like. If you want to know what it looks like, and it looks like what Green Bay did last year, and they certainly are going to hope that they can make that type of a run here this year. Can they? I don't know. I mean, a lot of things need to get cleaned up. They still need to be better. Ugly wins are wins, but they need to start being pretty everywhere to make sure that they keep winning because, like you said, the margin for error is thin. All right, let's get into some of our final segments. We had a fun week for the Growler bet. Now, the Growler bet last week was the final score, something we had never done before. And what will the final score be? We were going to say if you can get the winning team's score and then within 3 points of the losing team, then you would be the winner. Now, clearly by your submissions and our guesses and really everyone, nobody thought low-scoring slugfest was where this thing would end up. And only one person even was in the vicinity. Shout out to Fultonator on Twitter who saw this thing coming and went 17-16. Now, hitting the Bengals score, well done, but not within range on the second score. Would have needed both of those missed field goals by the Giants. You can blame the Giants special teams for you being so close, but can't quite hit it. Also, shout out to Glenn Hammerly, who's dedicated and said 6-9 Bengals was the score. Hard to pick that the Bengals would score 69 points, so shout out for you still getting that in. But did enjoy some fun subject headers that I want to make sure get their respect. Again, a good joke deserves respect. We want to make sure it gets it here. Daniel B., going off of our discussion from ARBIES last week, that's one small step for the Bengals D, one giant leap for Growler kind. We talked about the idea of playing defense on the moon was maybe how could that fare? Of course, I have pointed out many times in the past, any Ghostbusters reference will give you love. We were going to New York, so it all made sense. Tim Pollard says, Ray, when someone asks you if you're a Growler bet, you say yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. When someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. A great line from Ghostbusters. Charlie Lindsay had one that I really liked. He just said this is the Hurricane Jamar Growler bet and pointed out that he needed to discuss that hurricanes really need cooler names, like Milton and like these hurricanes. What Hurricane Jamar, Hurricane T, like you just need to have cooler names. It's time to update the hurricane name index. I might be with him on that. I feel like, with Jamar's kind of got a hurricane in his own right. Maybe Hurricane Jamar could have some plays from New Orleans. I feel like there's something there to it.
Hurricanes popular down there, not the real hurricanes, the drink hurricanes.
Drink
Yes.
Yeah, he makes defenses feel like they've had one too many hurricanes, I guess would be the side of that you would go to. RC Sprague says, Growler bet from the Bengals near future. I hope your firings go really, really well. Nice office space. He had a very high number thinking that the defense would continue to struggle. It didn't, so no need to go office space today. Kent Montgomery had a Growler bet, but he said it's perfectly folded into a scorigami swan instead of origami swan, with Jay calling out for the scorigami last week. So I appreciated that. And shout out to Kevon Duke, Blazers of Glory Growler for the Blazer game, and the Blazers of Glory on that one. So thanks to everybody for their submissions. Of course, if you give some lots of creative ones, I couldn't get to all of them this week. Keep those coming, and we will give you shout outs here on the pod. Now, run, pass, or boot. Jay, what kind of run, pass, or boot action did we have?
You talked before about the Bengals playing well recently and increasing their chances of making the playoffs despite the slow start. You know who doesn't have a lot of recent success is you and I in the Growler bet. Again, we both booted the winning pick. The last week's Growler bet was what's going to be greater: Giants sacks, Giants yards per carry, or Bengals scoring drives. I think I kind of get maybe a half a win here by coming up with that one because it was so close. But when you're in low numbers, you have to figure they're probably going to be close. So the Giants had 4 sacks. The yards per carry were 3.8, and the Bengals scoring drives were 3. You went with scoring drives as your run, yards per carry as your pass, and Giant sacks as your boot. I also had Giant sacks as my boot. I went with yards per carry and scoring drives. So I guess I win. My pass ended up being the closer to the top. So, but again, I think that's what 2 times in the last 3 weeks that our runs have ended up being the boots.
Yeah. So really just great performance by us. Keep listening to that. All right. So we have gone through Jay's Got Stats and the Growler bet and our run, pass, or boot. Arby's. Jay, do you have an Arby's for me this week?
Yeah. I didn't even think about it in the moment, and Chase Brown didn't either. And the whole should he slide down or should he have scored there at the end of the game? And the reason that it came to my attention is I got some texts from some people I know. One said, "Can you please punch Chase Brown for me? He cost me the game by scoring there." Facetiously, obviously, he doesn't want me to really punch Chase Brown. Another one said that they had a friend that I didn't get the details on how much the parlay was, how many legs the parlay was, but the final leg of the parlay was a Chase Brown touchdown, and they won 10 grand on it. I don't know what kind of massive parlay that was. I don't know how many times that person threw up when Chase Brown scored and then they called it back because of a holding penalty. I don't know what in the world they were thinking and not cashing out at some point, but they held strong. They got the Chase Brown touchdown. So I was like, well, that is interesting. And then, so I grabbed Chase Brown in the open locker room yesterday and asked him about it. And he took it on himself. He said, yeah, I've got to be more situationally aware there, and I've got to slide down. And Zach said, no, 100% on me. I need to tell them. I don't want my players doing math in the huddle, trying to figure out how much time's left, how many timeouts are left. I need to convey that. And Zach he showed them the 2022 Jets-Browns game from that where Nick Chubb didn't slide down. He went in and scored, and the Jets come back, get a 66-yard touchdown. They had no timeouts when Nick Chubb scored. He could have gone down, game's over. Jets get a 66-yard touchdown, onside kick, get another touchdown, won the game. That was a week 2 game, just a brutal loss for the Browns. And he showed the team that game. And that I know it's split. A lot of people think you just score when you can. That game's over if he slides down. But it was just interesting that it didn't even register to me, the debate of sliding down versus scoring, till I got some texts from some friends.
Yeah, he said he stood up in front of the team and said, "That's my bad. I got to do better." And on me, as some accountability that he took for not relaying and communicating that. After the game, mine is going to be on. You never know. You just never know what you're going to get when you're trying to get down the locker room. MetLife, for people, from our perspective, the visitors' locker room from the press box has to be amongst the longest journeys in the loop. Outside of, obviously, the Superdome. The old Superdome, they've apparently fixed it and gotten the elevator situation better there, where you don't have to go through the trash room. No one wants to. I'm happy to relive that story. But as far as the hardest to actually get to, hard to find one farther than MetLife. So it's a journey. So we were very dedicated to leaving early. As soon as Chase Brown basically had that touchdown, we were getting over to the elevator and to go down and make our long journey all around MetLife. Now, what ended up happening is we end up in the first elevator that we can get into, and before you know it, we're up on 6. That thing is packed, and it stops at every single floor there, which doesn't normally happen. Usually press elevator just goes all the way down to the bottom. Well, this was not going that way. And every time it would stop, either more people would get on or somebody from the back would have to get off. It was just a wild trip down to the field level. Now, at one point, we're all just enjoying how close the quarters are. And our good friend James Rapine pulls out his phone and he's like, "Here, look up." And we took a shot. He takes the shot, and here it is. If you're on YouTube, if you're just listening, I'll try to describe everybody in this photo. There's about, I don't know how many people we got here. We got about 12 people shoved into this elevator. More than that, you can't even see everybody. But it's kind of very memeable. Like, pick your person. Who are you in this photo? And I went sticking my tongue out, just really excited. Our good friend Trags right next to me is just the star of the photo as far as I'm concerned. He's just the person who everybody who's ever been in an elevator like this. I don't like this guy next to me. I don't like this situation. He is disgusted. Charlie's enjoying it. And then we have an old Eli Manning fan. Now, she's not old. I'm saying obviously a longtime Giants fan who's in the back and really dislikes everything about this situation. It's just chaos going on, and I really enjoyed this photo. James is like, "Can I post that?" And I'm like, "Go for it. Let's." And so it's out there now. You can probably find it if you haven't seen it, but just cracked me up, and it really kind of sums up the chaos that elevator ride down to the field was.
You know what? The underrated part of this is that Kelsey between Trags and James. Like how low down I know she's not super tall, but she looks tiny in there, just lost in the sea of you guys.
Yes, lost in the sea of us. It was hysterical, and I always, my buddies and I always have a line of, no matter what, if you're ever in front of a camera or anywhere, just don't become a meme. Is all you want. And I already saw somebody sharing a meme of like, I am the Bengals. It was our good friend John Sheeran. I am the Bengals running offense weeks 1 through 3, and Trags is the Bengals rushing offense weeks 4 through 6. They're like, "Oh no, I became a meme. I didn't want to become a meme, but I somehow became a meme." So shout out to James for the idea to pull out the camera there. Great shot, classic shot, great stuff. All right, that will wrap us up. We will be back, of course, on Thursday with PD and J, taking a closer look at Bengals versus the total dumpster fire that's happening in Cleveland. And when you have a dumpster fire happening in Cleveland, you know what you do, Jay?
Yeah, get the man.
You dial up Zach Jackson as quickly as possible. So we'll have our guy Zach Jackson on to bring a little bit of light to everything that's going on there, plus much, much more from Wednesday's locker room and Joe Burrow and Zac Taylor and everything else that we get. And we'll start previewing the game. And of course, Who Dey Light on Friday, myself and Mark Shalafu. So send in any of your questions that you want us to try to get to, whether ambush, ridiculous, or serious. Here for that. You guys have been so great. Thanks to everybody that follows along and sends in questions, because we want you to be able to drive some of that show as we get you ready and have a few laughs as you head into the Bengals weekend. So, all right, thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Have a good one.